Ladies and gentlemen who are joining us online and offline, good morning. I'm your MC today. I'm Vivian. I want to welcome to the 2022 Innotech Forum. Maximizing net zero IP value in Taiwan. So at this year's forum, we're honored to have invited representatives from IDB, Dr. Alex Peng from E3, Chairman Lee of TEMA, Chairman Yancy Hai of Delta Electronics, President Wong of CSC, and Chairman Wong of IPIC to the venue, as well as representatives from Google and HPE joining us online. They will share the international trends of net zero technology and intellectual property rights, and hope that through the experience sharing of domestic foreign experts, Taiwan's net zero technology will be linked to the world. So we're honored to have invited the organizer, IDB of MOEA, to give us their opening remarks. Now let's welcome him. Ladies and gentlemen who are joining us online and offline, good morning. So I'm now going to introduce our guest today in the interest of time. I think Taiwan is very strong in its technology and intellectual property. So we organize an Innotech Expo every year. And we can see this year we have gathered together 10 ministries and agencies to participate in this expo. And IDB would like to take this opportunity to let you know that every year we should organize a forum like this. And starting from last year. And this year we chose this topic because we know that, as President Tsai mentioned about the 2050 net zero path or way for Taiwan. So from energy, from industry, from lifestyle, and for society, there are 4 strategies as well as 2 major foundations. And then we have a schedule lined up for us. And for the industrial development, it's important to introduce green technology. So today, I really want to extend our gratitude to all the panelists and speakers who will share with us their experience. For example, we have Chairman Lee from the TEMA. We hope that we'll be able to use the policy of leading small by large, and then we can see that with the support of the major associations, I believe that we'll be able to reach better rewards. And today we also have President Wong from China Steel Corporation. We know that China Steel Corporation has a high carbon emission, but they are working very hard to reduce their emissions. So I believe that President Wong has a lot to share with you in their experience. And also, E3 is a very important partner for IDB. And then E3, we can see our representative, Dr. Alex Peng, is really an expert in this regard. And Mr. Yancy Hai, the chairman of Delta Electronics, has a lot to share with us. So today we can learn more from the Delta's experiences. And also, Chairman Wong from IPIC has rich experience in intellectual property. And I think that intellectual property management is a very important asset for companies in Taiwan. So I hope that with this opportunity, I want to wish this forum a great success, and I hope that you will be able to reap a lot of rewards from this forum. And then altogether, through the collaboration between the industry and the academy and the government, we'll be able to reach our goal by 2050. I wish this forum a great success. Thank you. So please remain on the stage. We will take a group photo. Now I would like to invite our special guests to come forward for a group photo. First, we'll have Dr. Alex Peng from E-Tree and Chairman Lee of TEMA, Chairman Yancy Hai of Delta Electronics, President Wong of CSC, Chairman Wong of IPIC. Thank you so much for your presence and participation. So please look at the camera in front of you. On the count to 1, 3, 2, 1. Let's take another photo. Please give us a thumbs up for the success of the forum. Thank you very much. Please go back to your seats. So we'll proceed to our first keynote speech. The first keynote speaker is Dr. Alex Peng, the Executive Vice President of E-Tree and also Director of Net Zero Sustainability Strategy Office. He will share with us the industry trends on the development of global net zero sustainability. Now let's welcome Dr. Peng.
I will take my mask off, just as the previous speaker did, so that you can see my face. It's a pleasure for me to be here to talk about the global trend. In a world of change, what kind of opportunities does Taiwan have? Or what kind of risks do we face? This is something I would like to cover today. Many of you are the management of businesses, so we will talk about this issue today. E-Tree's Net Zero and Sustainability Strategy Office has been established for 2 years, and it is quite meaningful because it involves manufacturing, materials, energy, and so on. And also, net zero is an issue that takes collective forces to tackle. So as the director of the Net Zero Sustainability Strategy Office, I shoulder a heavy responsibilities. And in the past, my background was in materials and chemicals. And I'm glad that as the director of the Net Zero Sustainability Strategy Office, I've been recommended by many in the academia to become the president of a society in management. And we know that management is quite important, especially when we think about geopolitics. After the pandemic, technology management and also management is required for managing climate change as we go through turbulent changes. So in a world of changes, are we able to innovate and also cooperate, and also through our business model or operation model to transform the way we do things? That also requires collaboration. So I will go into depth on that. So I feel like Taiwan is at a crux. We are transforming from the manufacturing sector to become a player in the circular economy. Furthermore, we need to think about transforming our service model. So this is something that I will cover today as well. When it comes to climate change, we also have the president of the Climate Change Alliance, Mr. Hasey. Hi. And I think it requires technology to deal with all the data, to control climate change and to control temperature rise within 1.5 degrees Celsius. We have to know that this is a threshold that we have to face to control climate. If we emit 400 billion tons of CO2, we will exceed the 1.5 degree cap. And if we continue to do that for 10 years, we will see temperature rise go beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius. So most countries, they plan to emit or curb emission by 40 to 50% by 2030. We already reduced 200 billion tons. However, we still need to meet the future challenges, and I believe that there are opportunities for innovation. We know that a lot of our products are exported to the EU and also the US, and I think the EU is quite wise in establishing these goals. For example, it targets 55% carbon reduction by 2030, and for the US, it's 40%. So the EU has established a overall goal and then started thinking about how to reach it. So only when there is a ultimate goal can we start thinking about how to reach the goals. And for CSE, they need to calculate all of the ways that they emit greenhouse gases for them to really think about how they can curb emission by 55% by 2030. So for the EU, they will start implementing CBAM in a little bit. And for the US, they will start levying carbon tax by 2024. And a lot of people are quite nervous when they learn of the development. And how does the UK see this issue? They established a special office for emission reduction. And we heard from Mr. Hai that we are seeing a cultural change for the US. They plan to invest 12.5 billion English pounds to generate job opportunities. And also, they hope to generate 40,000 new jobs by 2030 and also by 2050. So they do have a calculated goal. Of course, that goal will continue to change. However, they've already set down the foundation. And for Japan, Taiwan is very similar to Japan in terms of energy. So we see that for Japan, they've invested heavily into hydrogen and also fuel ammonia. And they are experimenting in those fields. And they see several important industries. They are thinking now about carbon recycling materials. They're thinking about resource circulation. And even they're thinking about food and agriculture and how these sectors can reduce emission. It is definitely not done manually, but depends heavily on collaboration between industries and also technology. So I'm saying that the future world will look very different. Even though we are producing the same products, the way that we do so is quite different. let's look at 2030 since this is a midterm goal. Apple is a huge company and they hope to be carbon neutral by 2030 in terms of their supply chain and also their products. Wow, carbon neutral by 2030. For Microsoft, they hope to be carbon negative by 2030. Those are quite ambitious goals. And they do have a set of philosophy to guide them toward those goals. For Apple, I had my colleagues look into their program. They are redefining all of the products to make them easier to dismantle, to recycle, and also to reuse. So if we look at iPhone 13, 98% recycled rare earths. That is quite amazing. And of course, rare earth is controlled by China. However, they don't need to depend on China for recycled rare earth. And all of the metal is recycled as well for their products. For example, aluminum casing. And what kind of a role does Taiwan supply chain suppliers play? I think we need to learn from Apple's way of thinking about why they can do this. So first of all, they define the scope, and also they establish a lab for material recycling. They have a material recovery lab that was built, and they have global recycling centers established. So all of this is within Apple's closed loop. And so they've invested heavily into low carbon production. And they've been able to phase out their old way of production by 30 to 50%. So what is Apple doing? In the past, they only sold new mobile phones, and now they're also selling used mobile phones. And that's not enough. If we look deeper, they are buying a lot of forests. So because they will create packaging products produced from their forest. And also they've developed carbon capturing technology. And they hope to offset the carbon that they've emitted. So this is Apple's strategic thinking. And if we look at the bottom, they have a special robots, one named Daisy, that can quickly disassemble metals and motherboards. And also they have a dismantling robot called Dave that is dedicated to dismantling or recycling rare earths, steel, aluminum, and also metals. So each robot has their special mission and is customized. So this is definitely worthwhile for us to think about. In Taiwan, we export so many digital products. So I think Apple's model is something we can learn from. Or we can become a supplier to Apple by thinking about better solutions for curbing emission. So technology is important. However, we need to think about how to change the industry. Most of you know Bill Gates, and Bill Gates has said that we need to prepare for the best, but plan for the worst in the face of climate change. So how can we boost technology development? We see that Apple has had a lot of innovation in business models to promote a net zero economy. And of course, when we think about being innovative, we need to have capital. And sometimes it works to work with the government. However, it's also common to see businesses working together. So let's see how public-private collaboration is done in this regard. So there is a breakthrough energy ventures for these kind of investments. And also through public-private partnership, Bill Gates is seeking to develop this overall mechanism. And Bill Gates is doing a lot, but there's still a lot that we can do as well. But what he is doing is also food for thought. So how do we move towards net zero in 2050 through low carbon manufacturing and also carbon capturing? We can move forward. And we're thinking about 2030. However, we also need to think about 2040 and also 2050. So first of all, we need to think about talent. How do we attract talent from around the world? This is something we need to think about. And as people talk about ESGs, I know that many of you here are also thinking about the issue. Let's now look at how these businesses on the slide are thinking about ESG. Elon Musk, a lot of people may feel like he is quite eccentric and different from us. 15 to 20 years ago, Taiwan became a part of the electric vehicle supply chain. So now we are also a leader in the world in that regard. And also, there's the Italian National Power Company that has highlighted open innovation. So in terms of power, we see a lot of personal storage solutions. So how do we have microgrids established to overcome power challenges? And the third example, I think many of you have had Mars chocolate bars. Mr. Hai, have you tried them? Mars chocolate bars or chocolate balls. When I was studying in the UK, I had to choose between a meal and chocolate. And I usually would choose chocolate over a decent meal. And Mars Chocolate is looking at small farmers in, for example, South America. And they use these chemical fertilizers that may pollute the environment to decrease their costs. However, that is harming the land. And Mars feels like that is not sustainable. So they are helping farmers learn about irrigation, and also they are helping farmers use fertilizers. So as a result, all of their suppliers have had their income increase by 20%. And for Mars Chocolate, they've only increased their costs by 5%. So this is a way to break free from the old model of operation to find a better balance. And that has contributed tremendously to the brand image of Mars as well. So all of the examples I gave are examples of curbing carbon emission. And we know that the government of Taiwan is thinking about transformation of the society and also of the industry. And we need to redefine where we go after transformation and how do we transform. And of course, it all has to do with technology and also business models. So when we think about energy, when we think about resource cycling and also business models, these are the fields that we need to cover. Only by thinking about these can we also take care of low carbon lifestyles, sustainable cities, and also successful aging. So new technologies, business models, resource investment, we see the intersection of the three. So only by achieving the three at the same time can we redefine and also redesign our entire system. So this is something that I think we really need to think about. So starting from one idea, Taiwan is a part of the global supply chain. So the end product is exported to the US or also the EU. So when we think about net zero, people are starting to talk about whether products can be recycled. And if we can be a part of the recycling chain, we can become a player. However, Taiwan cannot work alone, so we need to work with international partners because in different places there are different regulations or laws. So we need to redefine our materials, and also we need to think about how these materials can be recycled and reused. Only by starting at the top or in the beginning can we make this happen. Or maybe we can come up with a kind of special deal with consumers. We can lease them certain products and they have to start recycling the products. So we need to think about services as opposed to only selling the product per se. In terms of PV, in terms of the cycling industry, in terms of shoe production, I would think that Taiwan has many, many opportunities.
Taiwan is very strong in our petrochemical industry. And also we can see there are other industries related to the petrochemical one. So I think that in the future we can see multiple sources of raw materials produced in the petrochemical industry. So we have to make the plastic easier to be dismantled and recycled. In terms of carbon reduction, I think CSC, play a very important role here. It's actually, carbon is valuable, and we need to learn how to better capture carbon. And Taiwan lacks bio-based materials. And then because the source of bio-based materials is waste from the agricultural industry. And then Taiwan is very strong in agriculture. So that means that there is a lot of room, there's a lot of potential for us to tap in. So for CSC, they actually, they're engaging in several projects to better capture carbon. And they also work with many other companies like Formosa company, so that they can better catch carbon and then transform carbon into valuable products. And then when we talk about forest carbon rights, we really need to think about what grows fast in Taiwan. Actually, bamboos can grow really fast in Taiwan. So it takes only 4 years for bamboos to grow high. And then during the 4 years of growth, bamboos can capture a lot of carbon. And bamboos are very useful in the production of, for example, furniture. So bamboos actually 3 times more powerful than rainforests in carbon capture. So I think it's actually an advantage for Taiwan, so that we'll be able to reach our carbon reduction target of 30% or even surpass that target to 40 or 50%. So I think this presents a very good opportunity for Taiwan. Next, I want to talk about the electronic industry. And we know that in Taiwan, we need to think about how to produce more electricity. And then the Taiwanese government says that we're going to have 60 to 70% of energy coming from renewable sources. So it's important to develop, for example, hydrogen electricity. But in Taiwan, we cannot, and also wind farms are also very popular in Taiwan. But we cannot control the weather, and we also need to import hydrogen from overseas. And then I believe that in Taiwan we should think more about how to store energy better, because like recently it hasn't been sunny and it's been raining, so we really need to think about for the future how can we better store energy for rainy days. And then in Taiwan, in northern Taiwan, we have a more complete grid network, and then we can see that we can develop a hydrogen power generation park in northern Taiwan, and in Central Park we can utilize off-peak renewable energy for green hydrogen production. So I believe that this kind of plan can really change Taiwan's ecosystem. And so we need to think about how to better identify the opportunities. And when it comes to the investment of, lithium batteries, it will take a lot of money. And I think that large companies in Taiwan like Foxconn is committed to making large investments in producing batteries. We know that solid-state batteries are able to preserve a lot of energy. And then actually, E3 has done a nail penetration test to show the stability of NAEPE cells. And then we can see that to develop better batteries, we're able to produce a prototype battery which can be fully charged and discharged in 5 minutes and has a cycle life of 20 years. So I think that this is actually a potential for Taiwan. And also I talked to Chairman Hai. And then the world is actually developing solar panels, and every year 125 gigawatts of PV panels are installed, in Taiwan. But what about the waste that is produced from PV panels when they are retired? So for us, we develop a technology for us to dismantle the solar panels very easily. It's because when it comes to recycling, it's really not easy to dismantle the panels. And then in the past, people had to crush the panels. In that case, we're not able to recycle the precious metals in the panels. But now with this new technology, we can recycle, for example, the silver and also another metal for the production of another material. And then also we only emit half of the CO2s compared to before. And then by recycling, we can reduce the costs of batteries. And then in that case, we don't need to make a huge initial investment. And then by recycling half of the materials, we can significantly driving down the cost. So I believe that technology, we require only very small investment, in the beginning, and then we can leverage the power of recycling. And then now, because Taiwan sells a lot of computers to the world, but we have to think about how we can better reduce carbon emissions. We can see that, panels play a big role in carbon emission. And then we can see that, for example, how we can recycle the glass in panels so that we can reduce carbon emissions. And also we can recycle the motherboards of the computer so that we can better reduce carbon emissions. So I believe that Taiwan can work with international big companies to create an ecosystem. And next, I want to talk about logistics and bikes. Well, I had the opportunity to meet with the chairman of Giant. So the chairman said that he wants to make the lowest carbon emitting bicycles in the world. So in order to reach that goal, we need to know, about every component in the bicycle which emits the most carbons. And then by knowing this breakdown, we'll be able to reduce carbon emissions step by step. So we work with them to calculate carbon emissions and thinking about how to reduce the emissions. And then they actually work with their competitors and also with their clients to work together to reduce carbons. So I think with this kind of collective efforts, I believe that they will be able to reach their goal. So we can see, aluminum alloy actually produce a lot of carbon. So they're developing their recycling technology for aluminum alloy. So by doing so, they will be able to reshape their brand and then creating whole new different products. And I think it's important for us to learn from Bill Gates and Elon Musk because they invested in their VC, in their foundation to encourage younger generation to devote themselves in carbon emission. So here on the left-hand side, you can see a list of different industries, and these are the industries that are very strong in Taiwan. And then I want to give you an example here. We can see that cows will actually produce a lot of biogas, and then they are thinking about how to use a cell cultivation way to produce milk instead of raising cows to produce milk. And then they also the breakthrough energy ventures encourage startups to, for example, cut 5% of carbon emission per year to be able to win an award. So they are giving these incentives to the startups. So for Taiwan, we need to think about how to work with the international community and to encourage startups. So we help remove the roadblocks for startups so that they can focus on what they do the best, just like what Bill Gates is doing. So in Taiwan, we're able to recycle the batteries well, and then we have a very strong cloud-based network to calculate carbon emissions. So Taiwan has a lot of strength, and then we can think about how to create a new ecosystem and how to transform our investment and business models. So I think with the support of all the leaders here, you can work together with startups and as well as with E3 so that altogether we can reshape the future of Taiwan from all the way from R&D to production to management. And I hope that E3 will be able to better work with the industry and the government to create a better future. Thank you very much. Well, thank you, Dr. Peng, for your sharing. So he talked about the trends of net zero. He also shared with us many cases in Taiwan as well as in the world. So thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. Please give him another big round of applause. Thank you. So before we proceed to the panel discussion, we have invited two welcome speakers. The first one is Mr. Malcolm Almond, Google APAC Sustainability Committee Lead, and Dr. Brett Atlan, Deputy General Counsel, Intellectual Property of HPE. They will talk about Google's measures to reduce carbon emissions on the global supply chain and HPE's low carbon patent pledge. Now let's watch the Google's video.
Everyone, I'm Malcolm Almond and I lead Google's APAC Sustainability Committee as well as our food program across the region. I'd first like to thank Innotech Forum for inviting me to today's event and to the Industrial Development Bureau, Ministry of Economic Affairs and the Industrial Technology Research Institute for organizing it. This is an important opportunity for public and private organizations to come together, exchange ideas, and focus on shared solutions to some of the world's most pressing issues. With the various events around the world in the last year or two and today, it is clear countries and societies everywhere are grappling with an unprecedented economic and social upheaval. Despite the challenges that are before us and yet to be resolved, I have been encouraged to see how governments and citizens continue to recognize that our warming climate remains a critical challenge and are working to make sure our global recovery is a sustainable one. We see the impact of the climate crisis in different ways. When we look at the Asia-Pacific region, people have experienced firsthand the devastating effects of wildfires in Australia, flooding in Malaysia, typhoons in the Philippines, and recently, dramatic flooding in Bangalore. Given that, it's no surprise that research by the Economist Intelligence Unit revealed that the number of people concerned about climate change is growing most dramatically in both engagement and awareness in Asia, notably in India, Pakistan, and Indonesia. Here at Google, our data shows that over 80% of people say sustainability is more top of mind now than before the pandemic. At Google, we see great challenges as an opportunity. Since our founding, we've been working hard to take actions as a company and build new solutions to tackle climate change. We were the first major company to become carbon neutral for our operations in 2007, and in 2017, we became the first company of our size to match 100% of our annual electricity use with renewable energy, something we've achieved 4 years in a row. We are now in our third decade of climate action. We've committed to achieve net zero emissions across all of our operations and value chain by 2030. One of the key strategies for reaching the net zero goal that we've set is to operate 24/7 with carbon-free energy. We're also working to increase access to clean energy for others. Notably, we've committed to enable 5 gigawatts of new clean energy in key manufacturing regions here in Asia Pacific by 2030. Beyond this, we're thinking about sustainability in everything that we do, from operating energy efficient data centers to creating sustainable workplaces, to manufacturing better devices and creating more efficient supply chains. We're also deploying our technology and resources to support our partners. For example, our Environmental Insights Explorer tool is helping local governments track carbon emissions and determine how to reduce them. This tool is available for over 20,000 cities and regional governments, including countries like Japan and Australia. We hope it will be available in Taiwan soon. And if we look at Google Cloud, the cleanest cloud in the industry, we're helping businesses like real estate developer Lend Lease in Australia meet their sustainability goals by reducing their emissions and making their processes and supply chains more sustainable. Finally, we've made the bold commitment to help 1 billion people make more sustainable choices by the end of this year. We know that our products can be helpful because we see people coming to Google every day to search for ways that they can live more sustainably. For example, searches for recycling grew by up to 25% in Hong Kong and South Korea, while we saw a 70% increase in searches for electric cars and bikes across APAC, including places like India and Taiwan. So we're building new tools into some of our most popular products to make sustainable choice an easier choice. For instance, when people are planning a trip and they're looking on the internet, they'll be able to find a number of sustainability-focused features. On Google Flights, they'll see the associated CO2 emissions of the flight that they're considering. They'll be able to choose the more eco-friendly flight. When they're looking at hotels, they'll see which ones are eco-certified by trusted third parties and the sustainability practices that earned those hotels the certification that they're holding. Once they arrive at their destination, they can easily find a bike share station and biking direction right from within Google Maps, a feature which is available there in Taiwan. These are some examples of how we're using the power of technology to drive significant positive impact. This gives you an overview of how Google is not only leading by example, but also enabling our partners and empowering everyone who uses our products. We also know there are countless other building tools that help us, countless others building tools that can help us to take action on climate change. And as we stressed at last year's COP26 Global Climate Conference, when it comes to sustainability, we have a responsibility to work together and to forge new partnerships and to take action now. Earlier this year, Google's Chief Sustainability Officer, with support from our philanthropic arm, google.org, announced the launch of a $6 million sustainability seed fund in Asia Pacific. Through this fund, we will support nonprofits in Asia Pacific, not only with our philanthropic funding, but also technology and Googlers' time, all in an effort to reduce some of the most pressing sustainability challenges in this region. We hope this funding will help nonprofits to scale promising technologies, tackling challenges such as air quality, water preservation, and increasing access to renewable energy in this region and beyond. We see many organizations from Taiwan applying to take advantage of this fund. I want to end by saying that we all have a shared responsibility to save our planet, and it starts by coming together to scale our collective ambition to address climate change. This is the decisive decade for action. From governments setting strong, ambitious goals to companies embedding sustainability in every aspect of their business. All of us are committing to make life more sustainable. Once again, it's been a privilege to be here, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you very much for having me today.
以上就是 Google 亚太区。
So these are remarks from Mr. Omond from Google, and we will now proceed to listen to remarks from Dr. Elton from HPE, who is the Deputy General Counsel of Intellectual Property.
Thank you very much. My name is Brett Alton. I'm the Senior Vice President and Chief IP Counsel at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. And today I'd like to talk a little bit about our low carbon patent pledge. And before I get started, I just want to thank the organizers for the chance to talk about the pledge. I think it's pretty exciting, and I have precisely 10 minutes to tell you why, so here goes. First, I'll provide a brief history of the Hewlett-Packard Enterprise company, including its prior history as Hewlett-Packard. I'll explain the origin of the pledge and our founding partners. After that, I'll explain the pledge itself and the community we've started to build. And then I'll wrap up by sharing what I think might be next. So let's start with a photo of Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard. the founders of the Hewlett-Packard company. They founded HP in 1939, and it was backed by just $538 in cash. And like many great tech companies, it was started in a garage. And here's a photo of that actual garage, which is still there. The garage is located behind a house in Palo Alto, California, which Dave Packard and his wife rented after they were married. The garage is often called the birthplace of Silicon Valley, and HP is widely considered a pioneering startup of Silicon Valley. The garage is actually a museum today. And I had to share this photo, which is one of the first audio oscillators that was built to test speakers. And Walt Disney was one of the first customers. Now, of course, the oscillator has nothing to do with the low carbon patent pledge, but I do think it's pretty cool just given how far the company has come. Now, over the past 80 years, you can see on this slide just how far we have come and how diversified our product lines have become. Now, as many of you probably already know, the Hewlett-Packard company separated into two publicly traded companies in 2015. HP Inc., which is in blue, focuses on personal systems and printers. Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, in green, focuses on IT infrastructure, software, and services. And although the two companies have a very long common history, they're now entirely unrelated. That is, they're completely independent from one another. Now that brings me to HPE's mission and the origin of the pledge. The mission is to advance the way people live and work, and with a strong focus on the environment, social impact, and the governance goals. So we asked ourselves, what can the IP team do to advance any of those? We knew that mitigating climate change was an important goal and that our technologies could help. But again, how could the IP team help? And that's when it hit us. We could incentivize the use of low carbon energy by making a unilateral patent pledge. And as I'll explain in a minute, the cool part about the pledge is that nearly any patented technology is eligible for patenting. That's because the patent license is linked to the low carbon energy sources and not to any specific technology. So this slide shows the entire pledge. Now, we did our best to minimize the legalese and to use the most simple language possible so everyone could understand it. And as you can see, it includes just 3 short sections: the license, the defensive termination clause, and a no warranty statement. And although it's very short, it took us a long time to draft, more than a year. Now let me briefly explain the first 2 sections, which are the most important. This slide includes the licensing language, and it really is at the core of the pledge. So I'd like to highlight 3 points on this slide. First, the license is royalty-free and automatic. That is, there's no sign-up procedure, and everyone benefits equally. Second, the license covers the use, generation, storage, and the distribution of any approved carbon energy. Now, the approved carbon energy types include solar, wind, ocean, hydropower, and geothermal. So the more low carbon energy is involved, the greater the benefit you get from the pledge. Third, and this is important, patent owners get to choose the patents that they want to pledge. You don't have to pledge everything. Some companies have pledged hundreds of patents, others just a few. It doesn't matter to us how many you pledge. We just want to build a community of like-minded companies so they can work together and drive even bigger ideas. That is, we consider the pledge a stepping stone to a much bigger thing that we are working on, and that you'll see I'll touch on at the end of this talk. Now, this slide includes our defensive termination clause. And as you might have guessed, it's there to protect the patent owner. That means if a licensee sues a licensor, the license automatically terminates so the pledger can defend himself. We think this clause promotes even more patent peace, so a licensee will think twice about asserting a patent against a good faith pledger or licensor. So where are we now? We launched the Low Carbon Patent Pledge on Earth Day in April 2021. This slide shows the homepage of the pledge, and it highlights the fact that HPE did not do this alone. You know, after working on the pledge for more than 6 months, we learned that both Microsoft and Facebook were independently thinking about ways to use their IP to mitigate climate change. And rather than create a second or third pledge, they partnered with HPE. So if you have a moment, check out the site and take a look at some of the content. Just go to lowcarbonpatentpledge.org. Now, this slide shows the current list of pledgers, which includes some of the largest companies in the world. And the good news is that we're growing, and more companies should be announced soon. And in addition to the patent owners, we have a number of prestigious companies and organizations that are supporting this effort. These are just a few, and we hope to announce even more partners in the near future. So today, there are 12 pledgers. They've pledged 563 patents in 13 jurisdictions around the world. That's a pretty good start, but it's early, and we aspire to be much bigger. And by the way, we're still waiting for our first Taiwanese company to make the pledge. And this brings me to my last slide, which hopefully gives you some sense of what's around the corner. As I mentioned above, the current pledge, which we call version 1.0, was designed to grant everyone a royalty-free patent license to a hand-picked set of patents. But now we're considering version 2.0, which will be more demand-driven. So instead of pledging patents with no implementer in mind, version 2 flips the model around. That is, we're looking for ways to identify high-potential implementers and ask our community to grant a broad license to provide them with a complete freedom to operate that they need to succeed. So in version 2.0, we anticipate there will be fewer licensees, but they could receive far greater patent rights and possibly other support, including financial. So that's a summary of the Low Carbon Patent Pledge, and I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions whatsoever, just go to our website and submit a question or reach out to me directly. We're here to help. Thank you.
也非常谢谢 HPE 的副法务长 Dr. Alton 所带来的
Thank you, Dr. Alton, for your wonderful sharing. That's a very important message.
分享，期待未来能够
We hope that we'll be able to see our speakers in person in the future.
面对面的沟通。接下来就是焦点座谈的时
And now we're
间了
proceeding to the panel discussion. I would like to introduce our 4 panelists. And first, I'll have Chairman Li from TMMEA. He is also the director of Chinese National Federal of Industries and also director of Inventec. He wears many hats and has rich experience in the industry. And also, we have Chairman Yan Si-hai of Delta Electronics. He is deeply involved in the electronics industry. He joined Delta in 1999, and in 2022, he became the first chairman of the Taiwan Climate Partnership, working with the ICT industry supply chain to move toward to a net zero future. And also next, President Wong of CSC, he has been engaged in R&D and operation management for more than 40 years, leading CSC team to develop green energy, plan a carbon neutral path, and build a solid foundation for innovation in the steel industry. Finally, we have Chairman Wong of IPIC. He is also the Vice President and General Counsel of E3. He has nearly 30 years of professional experience. He has led E3 and the IPIC team to help Taiwanese manufacturers successfully resolve international intellectual property disputes. Thank you very much for your presence and participation. And please come forward to the stage. And also, let us welcome Mr. Wang Zhiren, Editor-in-Chief of Business Next, to moderate the session. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to the moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, guests from online and offline, good morning. I'm Editor-in-Chief of Business Next. So I'm happy to be able to moderate this panel discussion. And we just heard from 3 speakers talking about their insights in the net zero technology. So I think we have all learned a lot from their sharing. And I think for Taiwan, of course, we need to keep pace with the international society. And also at the same time, because our GDP is about 20 trillion new Taiwan dollars, and 26 to 27% is from the manufacturing industry, and then 65% is from the service industry, and the rest is from agriculture and also other industries. I think for Taiwan, for the past 50 years, and then we started our industrialization period. So we started from traditional manufacturing all the way to the semiconductor industry. So we can see that our GDP per capita increased from 10,000 to all the way to 30,000. And we can see that the manufacturing industry plays a very important role in Taiwan. So we can see that exporting really dictates whether we can further develop. So it's important to be able to reduce the carbon emissions. So we can see NFT and ESG are 2 very popular terms in Taiwan. And then we know that there has some turbulent development to NFT, but ESG, we know that really echoes with the topic today. We can see E is more important than S, S is more important than G. So it's really important to first tackle the environmental issues before we can talk about the 2 other elements. So that's why we're talking about net zero today. It's important to have a sustainable development so that the government, the country, and the industry can continue to develop. And we can see that the manufacturing industry is a major contributor to carbon emissions because of the factories, the facilities that this industry needs to use. So it's important to tackle the manufacturing industry first. But we know that a crisis is also an opportunity. So I want to ask the 4 panelists. First, on Chairman Lee of TEEMA, we can see want to reach carbon neutrality by 2050. So from the industry point of view, what are the opportunities and challenges that you see? Well, thank you so much for your question. I think we are facing really a huge challenge here. So I think E3 proposed some proposal report last year. Manufacturing industry in Taiwan, we can see the total output is about 9.4 trillion new Taiwan dollars, almost 10 trillion. And then the percentage related to ICT accounts for 38.8%. So that's a very big pie. So this is the output in Taiwan. And 60% is actually exported to the world. So Taiwan is an export-oriented country. Like I told you, the manufacturing industry account for 9.4 trillion in Taiwan. So we're able to actually produce 9.4 trillion in Taiwan last year, and then we account for 38.8% from ICT. And actually, we export 2/3 of the products to other countries. So I think that means in Taiwan, the output of the ICT industry is about 30 trillion. So 10 trillion is in Taiwan, 20 trillion is for export. So among the 30 trillion, I think half of the products is actually produced in China. So now we also focus on, for example, the US and Mexico to be our production base, and also all the way to Poland to Hungary. So that is the deployment of the ICT factories in for Taiwanese companies. So we cannot just focus on Taiwan because we have global presence. But still, Taiwan is the most important base for the ICT industry. Like I told you, we are facing a great challenge because this is a social responsibility that everyone needs to face, not just in Taiwan, but also in the world. So when we talk about, the Paris Agreement was formulated in 2015. And then more than 100 countries agreed to the Paris Agreement in 2015. According to my statistics, actually is more than 190 countries which agreed to the Paris Agreement. And Taiwan is not a member of the UN. But I think, Taiwan still needs to shoulder its responsibility. So when it comes to net zero or carbon neutrality, we have to do our job well so that we'll be able to play a responsible role in the supply chain. So it's been 7 years since 2015. So are we able to meet the goals set in the Paris Agreement? And then we know that COVID hits the world in 2020, and now we're in 2022. So we can see that, we made a commitment in 2015, and it's been 7 years. Although we were hit by COVID, we're still able to, follow our schedule and continue to meet our milestones. And for Taiwan, I think the total carbon emissions are not that big, but I think in terms of per capita, it's still quite high. We rank number 17. It's higher than Japan and also higher than the average number of the 26 EU members. So Taiwan is an export-oriented country, so we really have to play our role here. And just like what the Secretary General of IDB mentioned, that we need to lead, small companies by big companies. So, as representatives of big companies, we need to do our jobs here. And then it's important to work with the government, work with E3, so that we can help SMEs to all work together. And at TEEMA, we have more than 3,000 members, and many of them are SMEs. And so that we need to, work with the supply chain, work with the big companies such as Delta Electronics, so that we will be able to create synergies and then also be able to meet our goals. And Taiwanese industries are very strong in our resiliency. So we just need to think about our plan and also our responsibility. So we can see that because we are we export 60% of the products that we produce, and 40% are used domestically. And for the past 3 years, when I served as the chairman of TEEMA, I think in the beginning I didn't have a good understanding of social responsibility, but things have changed. And then in May this year, and then we actually see the government propose a 2050 net zero emission pathway. So we are following the government's policy. And I have accumulated a lot of experience for the past 3 years. And it's important to integrate ourselves with the global supply chain. So we can see from the World Economic Forum, because the forum is always held in January, but this year because of COVID, it was held in June. So the forum proposed a report. So we can see in the report, we can see the experts identified 3 risks. The top risk is what if we fail in our climate action. And the second risk is extreme weather or climate. And the third risk is the loss of biodiversity. Because actually we're, causing the extinction of many species in the world. So we're actually confronting with other species in the world. So I think that is a topic that we need to pay attention to. Thank you, Chairman Lee. And you talk about, you're able to propose an output of 30 trillion in total. And then you talk about, big companies and leading companies need to take the lead and helping with the SMEs. So I want to ask Mr. Yan Si-hai, the chairman of Delta Electronics, to think about the challenges, opportunities for Taiwanese manufacturers. Well, thank you so much for your question. For Delta, in terms of net zero, I think this is, of course, it's a very broad topic. So we are facing with this daunting challenge. But I think we can actually break down this challenge, this great challenge, into smaller ones. Because we are not able to meet our goal overnight, because we still need to use energy in our daily life. So I think for companies, especially SMEs, just like what Chairman Lee mentioned, they really don't know, how to start. So the first thing you should know is that, how much carbon you emit, so that you can do your carbon inventory. I think E3 has a lot of experience. And then you have a huge database in E3.
So E3 does have a lot of information. And also, the Taiwan Climate Change Alliance was established so that we could, with the help from TCA, or we were established with the help from the Taipei Computer Association. And our purpose is for the members to be able to learn from each other. So the Taiwan Climate Partnership, our major mission, our most important mission, is to equip businesses with tools. I'd also like to let you know that the TCP has worked with Tsinghua University, Professor Fan, who is an expert in climate change, and we've offered online courses, or we're offering online courses. The inauguration ceremony will be this Saturday for the program, and there will be 60 businesses that will participate. It's not many, but it's also a beginning. And also, you need to know how much emission you emit, and if you were to curb emission, what are the tools available? So this is a cross-disciplinary task or interdisciplinary task. You also need to know about materials. You need to know about everything to be able to curb emission. And there are tools available. There are many members in the TCP. And I know that CSC is also well versed in this field. To really achieve net zero, it really is a huge challenge. But I'd like to also share with you one idea. We don't have any participants from the Ministry of Economic Affairs here today. Currently, Taiwan is still heavily dependent on economic development, so we have a goal on how much we want the economy to grow every year. So in terms of power consumption, we see that the number is increasing year on year. For example, last year we wanted the GDP to grow by 4.5%. Power growth or power consumption grew by 2.5%. So it's good that power consumption is lower than the growth of the GDP. And we also heard from Dr. Peng about the UK's initiatives. The UK, in terms of curbing emission, they are doing a good job in the sense that GDP for them is growing, however, power consumption is decreasing. So if we're able to see that trend, if we see GDP growth and power consumption grow at the same time, it's not possible to reach net zero. We need to see that inverse relationship for us to reach net zero. So that's an idea that we need to have. For businesses, you need for your company to grow. However, you need your power consumption and also your emission to decline or to decrease. You can't have your company grow by 10% every year, but energy consumption grow by 5%. Or else we won't be able to reach our net zero goal. So for Delta Electronics, for many years, we've been setting this as our benchmark. Starting from 2018, the two lines, one needs to go up while the other needs to go down, rather than both lines going up. So how do we make our energy consumption go down? What do we need to do? There's a lot that we need to do, of course. Just as Dr. Peng said, there is no magic bullet. And for Delta Electronics, we have hundreds of projects every year to achieve this goal. So you need to start step by step there are larger projects that will generate a lot of benefits or save a lot of power. However, projects, after they're completed, they're gone. So I think we need to approach this step by step. And to help us achieve our goal, of course, there needs to be technology breakthrough. If you still use power from Taipower, for every kilowatt hour, you see an emission of 500 grams. So it's very difficult to curb emission if we still rely on power from Taipower company. So we need to think about alternative sources of energy, such as hydrogen. However, that is quite investment intensive as well. So we also have a program with CSC to explore how we can think about other sources of energy. So there definitely needs to be technology breakthrough. If we do things business as usual, we will never achieve net zero. So I think with leadership from E-Tree, and also we don't have anyone from IDB today. However, we see that the government is also helping businesses in curbing emission. So it is a great challenge. However, we definitely need to get our hands wet, get our hands dirty, and do the work. Thank you. Thank you once again to Mr. Hai from Delta Electronics. So this is indeed a challenge and also a kind of motivation. It cannot be done overnight, and there are several steps. So first of all, we need to take inventory of our carbon emission and also to set a price for carbon and also to achieve carbon neutrality. In the past, Taiwan thought a lot about cost performance, but now we're also thinking about carbon performance or the value of carbon. So if you do the same thing with less carbon or to become more efficient in the way that we emit carbon, I think we can definitely generate more value. So when we think about cost performance, that's another way of thinking about this. Another question for Mr. Wong from CSC. We know that the traditional industries such as steel or petrochemical, these are profitable industries. However, how do we reduce emission? What are the challenges and also what are the opportunities? Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Every time when I participate in forums like this, I need to state ourselves to the audience. I think we're always called on in these forums. For the steel industry, steel is a material most widely used because of how widely it's used. So we do have the highest emission. However, it's not just about looking at the total volume. Actually, every year our steel production is 1.85 billion. So actually, compared to other metals, it's actually the lowest carbon intensive. 1/10 of magnesium and also 1/6 of other metals. So in terms of our energy transitioning, steel is definitely an important material. However, we also know that the society, when it thinks about carbon reduction or emission reduction, they do have expectations. So we will do the best we can to curb our emission. So as we drive human civilization, we can lessen the burden on the environment. And we need to be aware of this direction. When ESG started becoming more popular, we had at CSC a 5G initiative, which is to curb emission in the manufacturing process. For example, we want to supply to companies like Tesla to participate or to contribute to carbon or to emission reduction, and also to be a part of the circular economy supply chain. And also we are investing in renewable energy and also related businesses. At the same time, we are encouraging our employees to live greener. So those are the 5Gs that we are working on. In a nutshell, it is all about curbing emission or reducing the use of carbon. For CSC, every year we have about 110 projects to reduce emission. And we're able to reduce emission by 130,000 tons. We need to do this step by step and also to accumulate our efforts. Last year, I realized that it's not helpful, it's not enough just to reduce emission, but to reach net zero. So this is also related to what Bill Gates said in terms of maximizing or reaching net zero. So in the past year, we've collected a lot of data. We have also exchanged with steel companies overseas. So after 1 year of hard work, starting from last year, in the short term, we're thinking about curbing emission. However, in the mid to long term, we want to pursue, first of all, low emission and then zero emission, and to reach net zero by 2050. So this is our pathway. So for us, reducing carbon and also zero carbon are totally different things. So when it comes to net zero, I think these are different ways we need to think about this issue. And I think reducing emission is relying on already mature technologies, but taking it one step further or to optimize the current technology. So that is a kind of evolution. However, for net zero, the technology is not yet available. So we need to step out of our comfort zone and to face the unknown, to explore new opportunities and to develop visionary technology. So that is a revolution, not an evolution. For CSC, we do have consultants from overseas, and they've shared one idea with us on net zero. They tell us that net zero is a high-risk journey. We definitely need to learn from each other along the way. And there are several steps. The first is to explore and collect data, and also to network, to help each other. We are also working with Delta Electronics, so cross-disciplinary cooperation. And also we need to think about the resources we have available. Do we have green hydrogen or green power available in Taiwan? That will also impact how we will pursue this goal. And maybe 5 to 6 years down the road, we'll be able to pick and choose the pathway most suited for us. We need to think about technology available. We need to think about cost effectiveness, and also we need to think about using new production methods. How can we produce high quality products? So based on these three factors, we need to choose the most suitable pathway. It's easier to plan than to implement. So in terms of reaching carbon neutrality, I think there are 3 challenges that we will face. First of all, the technology is not yet available. And secondly, we need a lot of green hydrogen or green power. We need to deploy these resources. So we are challenged in terms of resources. And also, we need the capital to refurbish our equipment. So definitely, this is something that we'll be able to do alone. It will need collaboration from between different businesses and also between different industries. And also, we definitely need support from the government. So I will conclude here.
Well, thank you so much for your sharing. You talk about carbon reduction is an evolution, but zero carbon is a revolution. So when we talk about reduction, it's about operational efficiency. But when you talk about revolution, you are talking about a breakthrough, a new technology. So I think that we really need to plan ahead. And next, I would like to ask Chairman Wong of IPIC. He is also a VP and a General Counsel of E3. And then I believe that you are asked with this kind of questions a lot. And also from your experience, what are the challenges and the opportunities that the Taiwanese companies are having now? Ladies and gentlemen, dear panelists, moderator, Dr. Pong, our guests, online and offline, good morning. So the moderator asked about my company IPIC. IPIC is actually organized by E3, MediaTek, and Wingbound Electronics, and then we hope that we'll be able to manage our patents better, so that we can collectively maximize the benefits and efficiency of the patents in Taiwan. So I really want to thank a lot of supporters of IP banks, and then I can see that Dr. Pong and also many other representatives from E3 are all the supporters of the IP bank. So we talk about E3 and also MediaTek. I also want to thank CSC for their great support. So we also, have patents from CSC. We also have the support from other government agencies, for example, the III. So first, we focus on 5G related patents. But after 1 year, we can see that many Taiwanese companies really come to me and ask me whether there are any patents related to net zero. Because in the first, I thought about 5G related patents, but then there are a lot of interest coming from Taiwanese companies in net zero. So we actually organized a new IP pool, which is responsible for net zero related patents. And then people talk to me, people say that, we know that net zero is important, and then we will be charged with carbon tax sooner or later. And then this person also told me a quote about the former leader of Russia, Gorbachev. He said that, it's important that not to be a latecomer, otherwise you will live a difficult life. So I think it's the same in the adoption of net zero technology. You don't want to become a latecomer. So we are facing this difficulty in Taiwan. And then for example, there is an airplane, and then all the passengers are seated, and the pilot is making an announcement that we need to go through a safety drill, and the exit doors have been opened, and then you have to follow the instructions and then get off the airplane. But the passengers are just seated and they didn't want to move, and then the pilot used English to make the announcement again, saying that this is a rare opportunity, this is an adventure. After hearing that, the U.S. passengers decided to take the lead, and then the pilot made the announcement in French saying that this is a very romantic experience that you can do with your partner. And then all the French passengers started to jump off the plane as well. And now there are only Japanese and Taiwanese passengers on the airplane. And the pilot made an announcement in Japanese, said that this is an order. So all the Japanese people did it as well. And then the pilot used Taiwanese to tell the passengers that this is free, so that all the Taiwanese passengers, follow the instruction as well. So that Taiwanese companies all focus on the cost. But you have to think about other elements as well. Maybe you think that, okay, after I make this investment, maybe I will fail in this initiative. I'm going to, tell my board and my shareholders about this failure. But we have to really, think about how to, work together, work with the other companies so that we can, fight together. I think it's important to have collective wisdom and efforts to make it work. And many companies here have worked with E3 for a long time, so we definitely don't want to work alone. And just like what CSC said, that we have to utilize external resources well to help us to succeed. And then we just heard from Chairman Wong of IPIC. He talked about, working together. So we do not want to work behind a closed door. We need to have an open, innovative pattern. So I want to ask President Wong of CSC. We know that CSC made a lot of investment in R&D, and you have very good results. And then you work with E3 to produce, for example, steel chemical co-production. You also signed an MOU with the Cheng Kung University to set up a research center. So I think when you work with external research institutes, how are you going to manage the IPs generated along the way? So I want to tell you about our carbon neutral pathway. We need to develop 2 processes in the near term, and then 4 processes in the midterm. And for long term, we need to develop 4 processes. So altogether, we need to develop 10 innovative processes. So we need to do R&D for all these 10 processes. So we cannot do it alone. We have to think about how to utilize the resources in the academia and also in research institutes. So that we also need to work with like-minded partners in the industry. For example, we work with Delta in energy storage, and CCUS, we have an experiment lab so that we can work on the development and deployment together. And I think hydrogen metallurgy is actually the most challenging. So we can still produce like 1 or 2 tons of carbon because we use magnesium to reduce the product. So, in the process, we will create a lot of CO2. However, if we replace the agent with hydrogen, Then when hydrogen meets oxygen, that will only create water, not CO2. But this is a difficult process. For hydrogen metallurgy, we create a research center with Cheng Kung University. So we actually work with 11 universities and research institutes with 22 professors together. We are doing, R&D, and then we also work with a Australian university. We also work with an expert from Japan, so that we have this great team in place to develop this new technology, so that we can really surpass the critical point. So we really need to be able to exceed the critical point to have a breakthrough technology. And also Dr. Peng talked about steel chemical co-production. So it's about working with different industries, working with the chemical industry, for example, to realize carbon emission. So we can see that we produce a lot of CO and CO2 as byproducts in our process, and these are all, greenhouse gases. After capturing these gases, after the purification of the gases, we turn them into the chemical factory, and then this can be turned into higher value chemicals. So that means we are turning waste into gold. So that is a great exemplification of the circular economy. So we really need to work with another industry to turn waste into gold. So it's easier to say than to do. But still, I want to thank ITRI for setting up a production line in our company. So we are also working with a chemical company to produce, to try out this new technology. So it's important to use external resources to work with like-minded partners, so that we will be able to follow the global trend of ESG and net zero, and to develop the necessary technologies. And then we can turn technologies into products. So that's how we turn challenges into opportunities. I want to ask Mr. Hai from Delta Electronics. I think you devote 8% of your revenues into R&D, have accumulated more than 10,000 patents, and you also have a lot of technologies related to net zero, and you're going to produce products, and also you are going to include that in your daily operation. So I want to ask about the investment you make and how it's going to affect your operations. I think in terms of the ICT industry, it's important for us to, produce new products all the time. So we need investment to make new products. So with the leadership of our founder, even at difficult times, for example, in 2008, during the financial tsunami, the situation was, far more difficult than now. I think you can still remember it very vividly about what happened in 2008. At that time, the founder of Delta Electronics told us that, because we were all very anxious about the future, so he had a town hall meeting and telling all the employees that we will not lay off anyone. And then secondly, we will continue with all the projects you have at hand. At that time, the profits were decreasing. Of course, it's a difficult time for the company. But fortunately, the market rebounded in 2009. So we could see that our R&D efforts paid off. So the investment really paid off. For example, in our industrial automation department, their revenues grew by 50%. If we had laid off people, if we had stopped the projects, they wouldn't be able to see this kind of performance. So now we talk about, net carbon. It's also about making investments. So in Delta this year, we started our ICP internal carbon pricing.
The reason for this initiative is for the emitters to really feel that they are emitting. We have different business groups under Delta Electronics. Some consume more energy, some consume more materials or chemical materials. So in a nutshell, it's to really put things into perspective, especially in accounting. If we deduct the cost of carbon, maybe they are not as lucrative as they think themselves to be. So for the carbon cost, it's charged $300 per ton by the headquarters. It's quite complicated, but to put it simply, we looked at a lot of suggestions from consultants, and we feel like 300 is an optimal benchmark. And for the carbon fee that is collected, it is used for developing new technology. So in total,
这样算下来的话，
1 year, I think we'll be able to charge $150 million a year. And using that carbon fee, we'll be able to do a lot of work. So I'm not saying that all of you need to collect $300. It's just that you need to take inventory of how much carbon you emit. And also you need to have independent meters for different departments, because different departments will emit differently and they will consume power differently. So you need to take inventory or to be aware of how much energy you're consuming, so that we'll be able to reduce energy consumption. It is cost consuming. However, only by doing this can we really reach net zero. Or if we do things business as usual, it's not possible. And I also like to ask Mr. Li Shiqing from TIMA. When it comes to net zero, TIMA also proposed a white book. And also you talked about business opportunities for net zero. Can you talk about that? And also, as businesses drive these dimensions, how do we strike a balance? The 4 dimensions, I think Dr. Peng already covered that. And I'd like to talk about patent, because patent is also quite important. I'd like to take the opportunity to touch upon why it's worthwhile to do this. In the past 3 years, because of COVID-19, people were not able to travel. And also, personally, I wanted to focus more on Taiwan, so I traveled around Taiwan, and I got to know more Taiwan as a result. So when it comes to net zero technology, I think we need to focus on Taiwan. In central and also in southern Taiwan, we've been working with a lot of businesses in those regions. I've only been to Kaohsiung 3 times in the past 30 years, but now I go twice a month. This is because I used to work in China quite a lot. And also for E-Tree, I think we've worked very closely. And we talked about in the near 10 trillion production value, the 3 science parks account for 4 trillion. So we've been working closely with the science parks in Taiwan. And through ICT, we realized that we needed to work with the energy sector. And in 2019, our exhibition was co-organized with the energy sector. And a lot of our members have invested in PV or offshore wind. So these are renewable energy sources. And right now, we are also working with other institutes. We are in the electric manufacturing business. So electronics, computing, and there are also other E's that we need to focus on, and one of them is energy. And because a lot of our businesses in TIMA, they are related to energy because we work in the electrical and also electronics business. And the third E has to do with the electric and electric vehicles. The U.S. has a law to reduce inflation, and a huge proportion of that goes to EVs. They will be subsidizing electric vehicles. And in June this year, we also received a delegation for EVs. So a lot of our members have also invested in EVs, electric vehicles. So the 3 E's, aside from electrical and also electronics, the third E is actually energy. And also we are working with IBMI. We've consumed a lot of resources in Taiwan, and also we know that the ICT will be an engine for Taiwan's growth. So we really play an important role to the future of Taiwan. So in the next 3 years, we will continue to focus on Taiwan and also to explore in the international market. And lastly, I'd like to say that when it comes to net zero, when it comes to environmental protection, our generation, we need to shoulder more responsibilities. This is something I've said it again and again. The earth is something that we've borrowed from our next generation. We need to return it to them. So if you rent a house, you need to return the house the way that you got it. The same goes for our earth. So we need to be aware of that and to take it seriously, to see protecting the environment as our collective responsibility, because we're borrowing the earth from our descendants and we need to give it back the way for it to be better than before. Thank you. I'd also like to ask Mr. Wong Pengyu from Intellectual Property Innovation. So when it comes to open innovation and the strategy, what kind of platforms do we have to bring together different businesses, but also to help businesses explore business opportunities? Thank you for the question. I think all of the panelists were quite insightful. I learned a lot. A lot of people say that patent is a window into technology. And I think a patent is actually a series of technologies. And for IPIC, we are an IP bank. And I'd like to share with you something quite special. So when it comes to net zero IPs, most IP owners, they want to license their IPs, not exclusively. So when it comes to net zero, we need so much talent. So a lot of IP owners, they feel like they want to lease the IPs to as many as possible. So we can see that these kind of technologies are quite valuable. So I'd like to ask all of the business owners and also leaders of associations to please share your technologies. You don't need to go for one-off sale, but really to share your IPs with more people. So please do join us. We need to really work collectively to lower our risks and also costs, and also to connect what you do to IPs. As you saw from the HPE video, they're already doing the work. And this patent pool is quite new for us. And I think we want to build a so-called national team. This is something already done overseas, so we are already quite slow. So I'd like to take the opportunity to please, let's work together to reach the goal of net zero. And technology itself is not important, is not enough. Capital is also quite important. So we also like to thank the IDB for their support. 3 years ago, we first helped a Taiwanese business finance by using their patent. So if you have the technology and you are rated by E-Tree, there are 26 banks that can offer financing in Taiwan. So you can start a startup, and also we can help you find capital using your patent. So among the 26 banks that I talked about, we have KGI Bank, we have Land Bank, there's Chenghua Bank, and also there is DBS that is willing to invest or to finance to those in the green industry. So we will provide you the information if needed. So for those of you that do have the need, please do go to our website and please do get in touch with us. For those of you on site, we also have a booth in the exhibition, so please do come visit us. And also, there are booths on display from E-Tree, so please do reach out to us and get in touch. Thank you. I think as we are developing net zero technology, there are, of course, many challenges. However, for startups, I think there are also opportunities for startups to open up business opportunities. Challenges could also be opportunities. Like in 1971 and 72 during the oil crisis, I think that was the cradle of the semiconductor industry. And also, we know that fuel-powered vehicles are now being phased out and EVs are now growing. So we're seeing that these are new technologies, or these ideas are spreading to different industries. So of course, there are challenges, there are opportunities as well. And lastly, I'd like to quote what Dr. Peng said in the beginning. Dr. Peng said, or he gave a lot of good examples. If you look at Apple's website, at the bottom, there's a button called refurbish. What does that mean? because iPhone 14 was newly launched. So a lot of people are waiting for the new phone. And you may need to wait for 2 to 3 months. There may be refurbished iPhone 14 phones. So there could be consumers that buy an iPhone 14 phone, but they're not satisfied with it. Maybe a few scratches on the surface. So these are refurbished products that they send back. So a lot of products are supposed to be delivered before Thanksgiving, but because of the traffic, they've missed that timeline. So they become a part of the refurbished product. So the refurbished business is a business in Apple that is growing. They do not promote it deliberately. However, the refurbished products are maybe 10 to 15% cheaper than the general product. So this is a way also to curb emission. And also this is something controlled or quality controlled by Apple as well. So in their supply chain, if we wanted to see net zero by 2050, Apple's suppliers, what they're doing is that they take these recycled 3C products, they examine whether the parts can be used, and they recycle these components or materials to be reused. And also for companies that use these products, these components, they're able to get more carbon credit. From a technology perspective, this is quite key. And I think based on different companies, you can use your imagination to think about the ways forward.
So I want to thank you all for giving us your insights at this forum. Now, please give the 4 panelists a final round of applause. Thank you very much. And please remain on the stage for group photos. Thank you so much for your insight sharing at this panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, the forum has come to an end. Thank you for your participation and listening. And please scan the QR code at your table or on the screen and to fill out a survey. Thank you, and please give them another round of applause. Also, today is the second day of the Taiwan Innotech Expo. We will provide a 20-minute VIP tour. If you have registered for this tour, please meet at the door of this room in 3 minutes. Please meet in 3 minutes. Thank you. Thank you very much, and please don't forget your personal belongings when you leave the venue. Remember to return your interpretation headset. Thank you very much, and I wish you health and prosperity. Thank you.